Maybe you've heard this one before. Does this character sound familiar to you? Orphaned, bullied, cursed, exiled, persecuted, traumatized, just a magnet for suffering. And through it all, they harbor a hidden power, a secret they may not fully understand themselves. To discover the truth, they must travel a path that will take them far beyond their humble beginnings and challenge everything they believe. Now, if we're talking about fantasy stories, it might actually be easier to count the characters that don't fit this description rather than the ones that do. Is there anything we can do to escape the gravity of the black hole that is the tragic backstory? Hi, I'm Gabriel Mercer, and this is Tablehaven. Tabletop role-playing games are meant to be collaborative. While you can play alone, a session with even one other person is exponentially better. Literally. The level of value actually increases at a non-linear rate each time you add another person. It's the definition of a network effect. That's the whole reason social media even works and why playing games with friends is usually better. It's about complex, shared experiences. So how does that work when someone in your group wants to be that shadowy drifter that doesn't play by the rules? You probably know the kinds of characters I'm talking about. They're dark, brooding, and edgy. They're the strong, silent type, so they nod a lot instead of speaking. Whenever there's a group decision, they're either quiet, disconnected, or absent altogether. They only join the team because it serves to further their interests, at least for now. Congratulations, if you've got one of those in your party, you found yourself a lone wolf. When we think of character development, we often imagine the secrets passed on to us by the ancient Greeks. To quote my good friends at Jericho Writers, in Poetics, Aristotle tells us that characters must be good. They must possess some redeeming quality. Appropriate. Their qualities must make sense based on their identity. Believable. We have to believe that such a person could exist. And consistent. Their character should follow a pattern throughout the course of the story. The good news is that even if you've never studied storytelling, you already know when this is working. Human beings are hardwired to recognize a good story when we hear it. It's so ingrained that we often fall back on conventions we don't even realize we're mimicking. When you imagine an interesting character, do you make them the victim of some tragedy before we even meet them? Maybe a dark mystery full of shady details. That instinct means you have a natural understanding of how character growth typically works. If you want a character to evolve over the course of a story, they will follow a path, typically called an arc, that leads them to a new understanding of themselves. Which means you probably know where you want the character to end up, and that means they have to start at the opposite end of the spectrum. You can't become compassionate unless you start heartless. You can't become forgiving unless you start vengeful. You can't become strong unless you start weak. Growing out of a tragic flaw or overcoming the adversity of a checkered past are tools that are so overused they've lost most of their meaning. While this transition makes perfect sense, it's certainly not the only way to make a vibrant and complex character. Thankfully, there is one simple tool that you can use to give your next character a solid foundation that you can build on during your next session. The model is perfect for role-playing because it requires almost zero preparation. You can discover the bulk of your character's development just by playing the game. Now, a person is far more than their bio, but that doesn't mean we need an exhaustive list of personality traits to fill out a description. If you're struggling with your character's backstory, there's an old Dragon magazine article titled The 7-Sentence NPC that provides 7 attributes that only need a single sentence each to be effective. We're going to adapt each of the 7 attributes for the purposes of creating a player character. Sentence 1. Occupation and history. What was your character doing before they started adventuring? What made them decide to set out and explore the unknown? Tyrek was a caravan guard with a flair for showmanship. When his skill with the blade finally matched the rumors he spread, he set out to find an arena and become a champion. Sentence 2. Physical description. What does your character look like? How do they present? Feel free to include other sensory details here as needed. Tyrek is tall, lean, and dark. Standing next to him is like being near a freshly laid bear trap. Even while at rest, you feel he could snap with lethal force at any moment. Sentence 3. Attributes and skills. These are exceptional. This one is covered mostly by mechanics and is a really good place to add color or explain the origins of certain learned skills. Having worked next to pack animals for years in the arid climate of the desert, Tyrek has learned to go without basic creature comforts for long periods. Constitution 15, He believes that offense is the best defense, great weapons proficiency, and has never been knocked unconscious despite devastating and potentially fatal blows to the head. Psy Warrior subclass. Sentence 4. Values and motivations. Kurt Vonnegut said, "Every character should want something, even if it is only a glass of water." That motivation should drive all of your character's decisions. If you want people to empathize with your character's actions, even when they don't agree, they have to be able to imagine themselves in your shoes. We call that empathy, and the simplest way to build it is by making sure that your character wants something deeply. Then make sure everyone else understands why it's important to them. Now, both parts of this are equally important, the want and the clarity. If your character has an overriding desire and isn't clear about why it's so vital, anyone observing their behavior will assume it's selfish or irrational. If you've made it clear why something is important and then don't make your character want it, people will see them as uncaring or powerless. To create empathy, you need character motivation and a clear understanding. Tyrek wants to be seen. His whole life he has felt like a single grain of sand among an endless sea of dunes. He wants to be recognized and believes the only way to do that is to win every fight, cleanly and decisively. Tyrek strikes fast, hard, and cold. He will not stop until he is a champion and all the world knows his name. Sentence 5. Interactions with others. Alignment never made much sense to me. So much of a person's moral compass is contextual. The same behavior in different societies and cultures will be perceived dramatically differently. Not only that, people don't always act in line with their values. Principles get distorted, integrity gets compromised, and true character is revealed. How much stress will it take for your character to buckle? What will they sacrifice to uphold what they believe in? Your character will only find their limits after they are tested. That means we need at least a general idea of the kind of person we're role-playing. For that, we only need to answer a few simple questions. If you don't have a good handle on your character's voice yet, a good shortcut is to use famous quotes that feel right when you imagine your character saying them. What does your character say? This isn't a catchphrase or a tagline. It's about how they communicate what they want people to know about them. Do they boast? Are they filled with righteous anger? Do they laugh at the pain of others? For Tyrek, the key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering. Okay, now what does your character do? When the party is dividing funds, do they argue for the largest share? Do they recklessly charge into danger? Can they become charming and eloquent in the presence of royalty? For Tyrek, I fear not the warrior who has practiced 10,000 forms once, but I fear the warrior who has practiced one form 10,000 times. And finally, what does your character do under pressure? When lives are on the line, will they reach back to help a friend? Is there a secret they would die to keep hidden? How far will they go to achieve their ends? And again, in Tyrek's case, to hell with circumstances. I create opportunities. Life's battles don't always go to the strong or fast, but sooner or later the warrior who wins is the warrior who thinks they can. Sentence 6. Useful knowledge. In most cases, this would be used to describe the more utilitarian features of an NPC, like flagging them as a quest giver. For player characters, we can use this space to include objectives that aren't aligned with the party or even the campaign. It's also a great place to add secrets that are known only to you and your GM, if that makes sense. Sentence 7. Distinguishing features. To keep this simple, my suggestion here is just to come up with one positive, one neutral, and one negative. In Tyrek's case, they're honest, hardworking, and thrifty to a fault. Now, your character can be raised by loving parents that are still alive, have a happy childhood, find good fortune, have a circle of friends they trust, earn their keep, be honored and respected in their homeland, and simply set out on a journey of self-discovery. What really matters is everything that happens after that. The simplest way to get started is to think of your favorite character, or a few from any story. Boil their personality down to fit in this framework and fill it out. Change as much or as little as you want to make the character your own. Use a name that doesn't give away your source and run them in your next session. Chances are no one else at the table will know where your inspiration came from, and you'll have a character that immediately feels more real than just a collection of stats. If you have any questions about how to develop your character's backstory, leave a comment down below. And if you'd like to share a character backstory that isn't a lone wolf to give everyone an example of how it can be done, head over to the Tablehaven Discord. And that's where we'll end this session. Thanks for watching.